If you grew up in southeastern Massachusetts, you know about the Triangle. It's not something people talk about openly, like the Red Sox or the traffic on Route 24. It's more like a bad secret that everyone shares but nobody acknowledges. The Bridgewater Triangle covers about 200 square miles, Abington, Rehoboth, Freetown. But the heart of it, the rotting, beating heart, is the Hockomock Swamp. The Wampanoag people named it the place where spirits dwell. They refuse to go there. Modern locals just call it the Hock. I'm an urban explorer. Or I was. My channel, Mass X, was starting to gain some traction. I explored abandoned asylums, old factories, the usual decay porn. But my comment section kept demanding the same thing. Go to the Hock. Find the Pukwudgies. Pukwudgies. It sounds ridiculous, right? Like something out of a children's book. Little wild men of the woods. 2 or 3 feet tall, gray skin, big noses. The legends say they can appear and disappear at will, create fire, and lure people to their deaths. I laughed at the stories. I recruited my friend Ben for the shoot. Ben was a drone operator and a total skeptic. He didn't believe in anything he couldn't touch, measure, or fly a DJI Mavic over. We parked my Jeep off a dirt road near the Raynham border in late October. The plan was simple. Hike 3 miles into the center of the swamp, set up camp on one of the dry islands of Earth, fly the drone at night to look for cryptids, and debunk the whole thing. The first thing you notice about the Hockomock is the smell. It's not just rotting vegetation. It smells like copper, like old pennies and dried blood. Smells like a sewer, Ben muttered, adjusting his heavy pack. Why do people think aliens hang out here? Because of the energy, I said, reciting the script I'd written. Magnetic anomalies, ley lines, or maybe just swamp gas making people trip. We hiked for 2 hours. The terrain was brutal. Thick briars that tore at our jeans, and sudden patches of mud that threatened to swallow our boots whole. But the weirdest part was the silence. Usually swamps are loud, frogs, crickets, birds, but as soon as we crossed the tree line, it was dead quiet. We found a dry clearing on a small rise surrounded by black water. We set up the tent and built a fire pit, though finding dry wood was a nightmare. Sunset came fast. 1 minute it was dusk, the next it was pitch black. And I mean black. The canopy was so thick it blotted out the stars. All right, Ben said, pulling out the drone. Let's see what's hiding in the dark. He launched the drone. The buzz of the propellers was deafening in the silence. Ben watched the screen on his controller, which was rigged with a thermal camera attachment we'd rented. Nothing, Ben said, after 10 minutes. Deer, raccoon, another deer. Wait. What? I leaned over his shoulder. On the small screen, in the grainy black and white thermal view, there was a heat signature about 50 yards away. It was small, maybe 3 feet tall. Is that a coyote? I asked. Too upright, Ben frowned. Bear cub? Then the heat signature split. 1 blob became 2, then 3, then 5. They were standing in a semicircle just behind the tree line, watching us. That's a pack of animals, Ben said, but his voice wavered. Maybe wild dogs? Suddenly, the screen glitched. Static lines tore across the image. Interference, Ben grunted, tapping the screen. We're losing signal. I'm bringing it back. He toggled the return to home switch. The drone whirred overhead and began to descend. That's when we heard it. From the darkness, just beyond the firelight, came a sound. It wasn't a growl. It was a voice. Ben? Ben froze. He looked at me, eyes wide. Did you say my name? No, I whispered. Ben, help me. It sounded exactly like me, my voice, my inflection, but I was sitting 3 feet away from him, my mouth shut tight. That's a mimic, I stammered, remembering the lore. Some birds can mimic humans. Birds don't know my name, Chris, Ben hissed.
He grabbed a heavy flashlight and shone it into the trees. The beam cut through the mist. It illuminated the gnarled trunks of swamp maples and the black water. Then the light caught something. Perched on a low branch about 20 feet away was a creature. It looked like a small gray monkey, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its fingers were spindly. It had large ears and a snout like a porcupine. It wasn't wearing clothes, but its skin looked tough like hide. It stared right into the light. Its eyes glowed a dull, luminescent orange. "What the hell is that?" Ben whispered, stepping back. The creature opened its mouth and smiled. It had too many teeth. Then it raised a small wooden tube to its lips. "Thick!" Ben slapped his neck. "Ow! Something bit me!" He pulled his hand away. There was a small feathered dart stuck in his palm. He had blocked it just in time. It was aiming for his jugular. "They're shooting at us!" I screamed. "Ben, run! Get the car keys!" I scrambled to grab my pack, but Ben didn't move. He stood there staring at his hand. His eyes were glazing over. He swayed on his feet. "Ben?" He looked at me, but he wasn't seeing me. He smiled, a slack, dreamy smile. "Do you see the lights, Chris?" he murmured. "The pretty lights." I looked where he was pointing. Above the swamp, floating silently through the trees, were orbs. Blue, red, and orange balls of light, dancing like fireflies on steroids. They were mesmerizing, beautiful. "Ben, snap out of it!" I grabbed his shoulders. "It's poison! We need to go!" He shoved me away with surprising strength. "I have to go with them," he said calmly. "The little men, they want to show me the zoo." "The zoo?" Before I could grab him again, Ben turned and walked straight into the dark water. He didn't swim, he just walked waist deep toward the dancing lights, and the shadows around our camp began to move. Dozens of them, small gray figures stepping out from behind the trees, the Pukwudgies. They weren't attacking, they were herding. I realized with a sick jolt of terror that the stories were wrong. They weren't just mischievous spirits, they were guards, and we had just broken into something we weren't supposed to see.
I abandoned the tent. I abandoned the expensive camera gear. I grabbed my flashlight and the machete I kept for brush clearing, and I ran. Not after Ben. He was gone, swallowed by the mist and the lights, but back toward where I thought the road lay. But the swamp changes at night. The path we had hacked on the way in was gone. In its place was a wall of briars so thick a rabbit couldn't squeeze through. I turned left, splashing through knee-deep muck. The smell of copper was overwhelming now, making me gag. Everywhere I looked, I saw eyes, orange, glowing eyes low to the ground. They were watching me, following me. Flip, thwip. 2 more darts whizzed past my head, embedding themselves in a tree trunk with a dull thud. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, swinging the machete blindly at the brush. A voice answered from the darkness, a chorus of voices, high-pitched, scratchy like dry leaves rubbing together. "McQueen! McQueen!" It sounded like an Algonquian word I had read in my research. It meant feather. Or maybe little person. I didn't know. I didn't care. I scrambled up a muddy bank onto another dry island. I collapsed, gasping for air. The silence returned. The Pukwudgies had stopped chasing. That was worse. Why did they stop? Then I felt it, a vibration in the ground, deep, rhythmic thuds. Boom, boom. It felt like a T-Rex was walking nearby. I shined my light upward. The trees here were broken, massive oaks snapped in half like toothpicks, and standing in the clearing, illuminated by the pale moonlight filtering through a gap in the canopy, was impossible. It was a bird, but not a bird. It was the size of a Cessna plane, black feathers that looked like oil slicks, a beak hooked and sharp enough to tear a car open. It was a Thunderbird, another legend of the Triangle. It was perched on a massive boulder, preening its wing.
It looked down at me with an eye the size of a dinner plate. I froze. I stopped breathing. The bird let out a low screech that vibrated in my chest cavity. Then, a beam of light cut down from the sky. It wasn't the moon. It was a spotlight, pure, blinding white light. It came from a triangular craft hovering silently above the treetops. No sound, no wind, just a black triangle blocking out the sky. The light hit the Thunderbird. The massive bird didn't fly away. It looked up at the light submissively. And then I saw the Pukwudgies Ben. They were standing at the edge of the clearing, holding long spears. They weren't hunting me. They were watching the bird. They were zookeepers. The realization hit me so hard I almost laughed. The Bridgewater Triangle isn't a haunted forest. It isn't a portal to hell. It's a containment zone. The UFOs, the cryptids, the ghosts, they are all kept here, and the Pukwudgies are the wardens appointed to keep them in and keep us out. Ben hadn't been killed. He had been taken for processing. I started to back away slowly, trying not to make a sound. Snap. A twig broke under my boot. The Thunderbird turned its head. The UFO's spotlight swiveled toward me, and the Pukwudgies turned as one. The one in the center, taller than the rest, wearing a necklace of bones, pointed a long gray finger at me. A ball of fire materialized in his hand, not a torch, just a hovering sphere of blue flame. It threw it. The ball struck the ground near my feet, exploding into a wall of unnatural blue heat. It didn't burn the trees, it burned the air. I scrambled backward, falling into the water on the other side of the island. I swam until my muscles burned and my lungs screamed. I didn't look back. I could hear the screech of the Thunderbird and the chittering of the little men behind me. I don't remember finding the road. I remember stumbling out of the tree line, covered in mud and leeches, and collapsing onto the asphalt of Route 138. A trucker found me. He thought I was a junkie. He drove me to the police station in Rainham. I told them everything. I told them about Ben, about the little men, about the bird and the ship. They looked at me with tired, pitying eyes. "Swamp gas," the sergeant said, writing in his notebook. "You boys got high and your friend got lost in the bog. We'll send a search team when the sun comes up." They searched for a week. They found our tent. They found the drone. They never found Ben. But they found something else. Near the campsite, stuck into the bark of a tree at eye level, was Ben's driver's license. It was scorched around the edges, and scratched into the plastic, crude and jagged, was a symbol. A triangle. I stopped making videos. I moved out of Massachusetts. I live in a city now, on the 4th floor of an apartment complex. No trees, no woods. But sometimes I wake up at night. I hear tapping on my window. I'm on the 4th floor. There is no balcony. Last night I got the courage to look. Pressed against the glass, hanging by long, spindly fingers, was a gray face, huge ears, glowing orange eyes. It smiled at me, and then it breathed on the glass. The condensation formed a shape before it faded. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. Property of Hockomock. They know who I am. They let me go so I could warn others. Or maybe I never really left. Because when I look in the mirror now, my eyes seem a little brighter, a little more orange, and I have this terrible, aching hunger for the woods. If you are listening to this, stay away from Bridgewater. Stay away from the Triangle. It's not a legend. It's a cage. And sometimes the keepers need to feed the animals.